So what we want to do now is hear from our elected officials, and they can present their top initiative or respond to anything that's been said so far. And on this go-round, we're going to go in order of seniority. Seniority has privileges. And then we're going to ask each of them to speak for about 3 minutes. I know Eileen's down here, the 10-dayer. So 3 minutes, and we have Steve Rabin, who's, I think, the Jewish community's official timekeeper, who'll kind of let you know when we're hitting 3 minutes, just so we can try and get everybody in, and then we're going to take some questions. So, again, we'll get started, and we get to start with Senator Janet Howell. And let me just say a few words. Janet is from the 32nd District, and that contains the McLean area. She's been in the Senate since 1992. She chairs the Privileges and Elections Committee and holds position on the influential Rules, Courts of Justice, and Education and Health and Finance Committees. Senator Howell has been a champion for those who are vulnerable in our society, and we've been proud to work with her on many issues, including separation of church and state, as well as efforts to protect crime and domestic abuse victims. And I know she's also championed insurance coverage and will continue to champion insurance coverage for children with autism. Senator Howell.
Thank you. I'm as close to this microphone as that one, and since I tend to bounce around, I thought I'd stand up. I want to thank you for having me here again, and I'm amazed that I'm the most senior. I'm actually not. Dick Saslaw is very senior to me in the Senate, but he's not here, so I love going first. I never thought 20 years ago when I first won that I would have so much responsibility, but I really love it. And I've also noticed over the last 20 years of coming to be with you that every single year on every single one of your legislative items, I'm in agreement. I wish that were always the case. I wanted to talk very briefly to you about 3 topics. The first is the budget. We just got back, those of us in the Senate, from a retreat where we looked at the budget. Last year, as you may remember, we had to cut $4.5 billion off of a budget that had already been reduced by over $3 billion. The good news is that it looks like things won't be that dire this coming session. The bad news is we're still going to have to be cutting. It looks like we're going to have an additional $300 million in revenue, but we're going to have $500 million in increased expenditures that must be made, so we'll be down $200 million. It's getting increasingly gut-wrenching and difficult to make these cuts, and they're disproportionately on the disadvantaged and the young. But I'm going to do everything I can to try and level the playing field for the disadvantaged and the young. The second subject I'd like to touch on is redistricting. As Steve mentioned, I chair the Senate committee that will be doing redistricting. Good news, Northern Virginia is going to pick up about 1.6 or 1.7 senators. That's the good news. The bad news is, in order to accommodate those new slots, we're going to have to be rearranging rather dramatically every single district in the Senate, and since we don't have the census data yet, we don't know how we're going to do it. And we are all up for re-election next November, so we're going to be on an extraordinarily tight time frame, both for redistricting and for the elections. And thirdly, I just want to touch on the ABC privatization issue. It apparently is coming back. The governor's initial proposal was almost universally panned, so he is going to try and have another one. No way the Senate is going to let general funds be reduced. And I see my time is up, so thank you.
And Delegate Scott serves on the Privileges and Elections and Appropriations Committees and has worked with the JCRC supporting First Amendment issues and protecting key social services in Virginia. Delegate Scott, great to see you.
Thank you very much. It's always great to be here with you all, and I see in the back of the room, I think he's standing now, one of my longtime mentors in politics in Virginia, Mr. Robert Weinberg. Let's give him a great hand, Bob. Bob is really a model for many of us who follow the progressive path in Virginia. This year is going to be, as Janet indicated, a very tough year. Janet and I, by the way, were elected the same day in 1991. Unfortunately, that day I was down by 17 votes and finally won by one single vote. So I try to remind children and not so children and various audiences that their vote does in fact make a difference, and I'm here to attest to it. I've enjoyed the opportunity to work on a number of important issues, and of course continuing to be important for Northern Virginia is our budgetary problem, as Janet has ably outlined, and I won't go into any more details except to say, if anything, it's worse than we thought. And the problem is that the other side of the aisle does not want to raise any revenues. I've, in the last couple of years, have introduced bills to change the gas tax from pennies per gallon to a percentage. This is not a tax increase, you understand, because it gets the same revenue when it's reduces the same revenue when it's adopted, but as the costs go up, so will the percentage cause our revenues to go up. And you would think that since Northern Virginia, for example, has had a percentage gas tax for as long as I have known Vivian Watts, it has doesn't seem to generate any great following in the rest of the state. I have heard recently that the feds are looking at that as a way to raise revenues. Some of the fairly important people on the Hill have made mention of the fact that they know that we've got to raise some money for transportation nationally, or our falling apart infrastructure is going to get worse. So we will wait to see and exactly how that's going to work out. Another initiative that I'm very interested in is, particularly since the governor introduced or created a new idea called a directive to prohibit discrimination, particularly against gays, that he based that on the 14th Amendment, the 10th Amendment, I'm sorry, not the 14th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment, for some of you old-timers here, you will know that that was the amendment on which Barney Cohen based the Loving versus Virginia case and struck down intermarriage law, interracial marriage prohibitions. I see my time is up. I apologize for going over. Thank you very much for inviting us, and look forward to chatting with you.
Let me say, our next speaker, who would have thought it was 30 years ago, I was 4 and you were 3 when we did the Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee, and here we still are. Delegate Vivian Watts has served the 39th District, which includes parts of Annandale, since '96, but before that, we did this before. I forgot the
81.
81.
I was elected in 81, so
81.
82, 86.
And then she was somehow pulled out of this whole thing by a governor who she agreed to be Secretary of Transportation and Public Safety under Governor Belials. Delegate Watts serves on the Courts of Justice, Finance, and Science and Technology committees. And because of her expertise here in Northern Virginia, she also really got the CASA program going here. Okay. So that's another part of her legacy. In the legislature, she's focused on a number of things. Strengthening nursing home regulatory boards is one. She introduced legislation to create the annual Virginia Holocaust commemoration and was our first VIP speaker at the JCRC's Yom HaShoah commemoration here in Northern Virginia in 2008. My privilege to introduce Delegate Vivian Watt.
Thank you so much, Steve. The introductions are almost as long as our 3 minutes, but
All right, I'll have to cut them down.
no, not at all. No, I didn't mean that ungraciously, because actually there's so many things you said. Steve talked about how long we've worked together. If I were to name all my mentors and colleagues in this audience, I would use my full 3 minutes. It has really been a pleasure to work with so many of you, and particularly as I was listening to your package, I like to be systematic about things, and I'm thinking here's a package that is all about individual rights of individuals who care very much about the common good, about the welfare of others. And that is an incredible and wonderful combination, which, like Janet, it is such a pleasure each year to be able to get this kind of reminder about what is right. I also, going back on age, I really cut my teeth in public policy on ask not what your government can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And I wanted to mention that because, unfortunately, I don't think that pendulum has still swung back, and we're still very much, what's in it for me? I mention that because it causes me great concern when I look at our economy over the length of time that I have been involved. I've never seen anything like it. And so here we are in Virginia, the good news, fiscally very well managed. We're not California. But we have made cut after cut after cut since 2007. We are now have a budget that is less than it was in 2006. With a lot of people hurting. It is true that we are approximately 2 points below the national average in unemployment, but in Virginia there's an incredible diversity, and there are serious problems of unemployment and unmet human needs. So whereas other states have been able to balance budgets by cutting Medicaid, when you're 48th in the nation and you're at the absolute basic, hardly anywhere near the kind of waivers that are needed for individuals who are trying to meet their needs and be as self-sufficient as possible, there's very little to cut, and it continues to be a challenge. And certainly as we see the fact that we balance this budget using federal funds from the stimulus package, as well as not making payments into our Virginia retirement system, there is a great deal of concern that we have a lot to deal with as the economy is only slowly coming back, and we've got those issues. Be very careful of all transportation proposals that would take money in one form or another from the general fund. We desperately need funding after 26 years of not investing in this major infrastructure. Tom Russ, Joe May, and myself are working on a good package that is serious in case anyone else gets serious. Pleasure.